Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to another edition of the Nickel Press Show, the Tuesday night edition. We cover waiver wires, we cover start sits, we cover the major topics going into each week of fantasy football. I'm your host, Doug Moore. I'm part of the Nickel Press team. I also write for Razzball. Joined this week by a very big up-and-comer in fantasy football. She contributes for FanDuel. She contributes for her fantasy football as well. Brandon Lee, how are you tonight, Brandon?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Some injuries, over the weekend hurt my teams, and I don't know where I'd be without fantasy football. So that sort of consumes my life, but that's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the injuries. We're here to talk about the new shakeups and some coaching staffs and how it affects us in the world of fantasy football. But I guess the number one thing to talk about, another week, another top running back goes down. This past weekend, Le'Veon Bell suffered a torn MCL. This was after coming back from a 2-game suspension. He was doing really well. Big Ben was back, and then he goes and gets hurt, and he's out for the season now. So everybody's scrambling, as they did when Jamal Charles got hurt, to get the next backup, which is D'Angelo Williams, who did really well in Bell's absence originally. So, Brandon, I'm curious. There's so much hype surrounding D'Angelo Williams. Do you really think what people are saying is true? Do you think he can really put up, top 12, top 15 numbers and be a running back one contributor for the rest of the season to those especially who may have lost Bell?
Yeah, absolutely. So every week I put together the voiceover for the perfect lineup for FanDuel, which are all the top performers on FanDuel, and that's a 0.5 PPR setting. And I like 0.5 PPR. Some people think it's a cop-out, but I actually think it's the most accurate as far as the effectiveness in the game. This week, the number 2 running back was actually Shane Vereen at 16.3 FanDuel points. If you didn't count the Thursday night game, because most people play in the larger 1 p.m. start time Sunday games. Running back's a tough position, and D'Angelo Williams, did a great job. He had 3 games with significant playing time where he got 13 or more FanDuel points. That was week 1, 2, and then last week in week 8. So if you're looking for 13 or more FanDuel points, and actually one week he got 29.2 points in a half-point PPR league. So, that is running back one territory right now, and there are a lot of ho-hum performances happening all over people's rosters. So they would love 13 FanDuel points or more. Let me tell you, it's pretty ugly out there.
Yeah, it's just been a bad season for these top-tier running backs. Jamal Charles is out for the season. Le'Veon Bell was out for 2 games. Now he's back. Marshawn Lynch missed some time. I think C.J. Anderson was, and I don't know if you know, Brandon, C.J. Anderson was dear to my heart, and then he goes and does this. I don't know what, where that leaves him and I.
A lot of you guys got swept up in him.
Yeah, I fell for it, and he got me. He got me good. But then I dropped him.
I have zero stock in him, thank God.
I don't know. Maybe it's the curse of the Broncos running back situation. Who knows? But, it's just been a tough year for these top-notch running backs that everybody was targeting in the first round, the second round. And, we're seeing someone like Charkandrick West putting up, I would think, consistent running back 2 numbers at least the past 2 weeks. And has been one of the more solid waiver wire pieces that has been able to contribute for teams. And now D'Angelo Williams can come in and do that again, where he had, I think, his first week he went over for 125 yards, and then the second week he ran for 3 touchdowns. So you can only imagine what he can do, especially with Big Ben back, with Antonio Brown there, Martavis Bryant as well. I would think he could be the crown jewel, especially for teams that are struggling. That could be a huge turnaround.
Well, when you're looking to replace the running backs, you want to go with teams that have 20 or more carries in each outing. Therefore, you want to look for the guys that are replacing people with usage. So that's why, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to use whatever running back is back there. They are a run-first team. This is how they are built. And in a way, so is Pittsburgh. I know that they have Antonio Brown, who is a super stud as long as they don't have Michael Vick out there for crying out loud. Yes, but they do run the ball a lot. And D'Angelo Williams made sure to lose weight and really fashion himself after the mold of Le'Veon Bell in the offseason. He made sure that he was the type of back that they needed if he was called upon. And he knew he was going to be called upon in those first two games. It's unfortunate he's called upon again, but he's certainly ready. And whenever he's been there, he has been solid. So, I was telling people not to drop him if they had him, if they had room on their roster. But, I'm in a league where I only have 4 bench spots. This week there are 6 teams on bye. I'm going to play someone on bye this week because I'm not going to drop the people on my bench. So, it depends on your league. You may or may not still have him. And I'm certainly in leagues that are so deep that he's already gone. He's not there anymore. But certainly if you're in like a very standard league or with a league with people that don't really pay attention, we've all been in those leagues, then absolutely go pick him up. But don't be surprised if he's already gone though, and my apologies.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think. You brought up a great point. D'Angelo Williams molded his game after Le'Veon Bell. He knew he was going to be, like you said, called upon at least the first 2 games. And it's crazy to think that they brought in a quarterback like Mike Vick to back up Ben Roethlisberger. Their teams are not even close to each other. So it's relieving to see that on one part. I would talk the whole hour about Pittsburgh. I love what they have there. But we got to switch into another, major running back injury. We don't know how long. Obviously, this doesn't sound to be season-ending. But Matt Forte went down on Sunday, suffered an MCL injury. It doesn't sound like he'll play this Monday night. It sounds like a multi-week injury. John Fox said it shouldn't be a season-ender, and he doesn't need surgery as of right now. But in the interim, we got a guy in Jeremy Langford who was, I believe, a third-round pick out of Michigan State, who he's got a great matchup this week. He's facing San Diego, which have been very good to fantasy running backs this season. What do you make of Jeremy Langford? I would assume he's a guy to pick up, but is he a guy that, with this matchup and all the buys, is he someone worth starting as well, maybe in a flex spot?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I would start him as my starting running back this week. As I said, 6 teams on bye. It's pretty dicey out there. I don't know if you can start anyone who's not in a running back against San Diego type of situation. I think that it's really important. Their defense lets anything go through, and there's no way John Fox is going to risk injuring Matt Forte more in a matchup where they could put a baby behind the offensive line and run. So no, it's not going to happen. As far as Chicago's bye week is concerned, it's done for them. So they face San Diego this week. Then it's St. Louis. That's bad. Then it's Denver. That's bad. Then it's Green Bay. That's bad. It's not until San Francisco in week 13 that you have another start that you feel great about, and that's probably when I think Matt Forte is going to come back, based on John Fox being a conservative coach and the fact that Matt Forte's injury really stopped him from getting traded, right? Now all of a sudden he's a fire sale, and they're like, no, we're not going to let Matt Forte go unless we get value. So I think there's a possibility that they're going to try to figure out a situation during the off season or what have you. They don't want him more banged up. So I think they're going to be very conservative with him moving forward. So I don't love the matchups for him other than this week. But if you're someone who is, and I have some leagues like this too where I'm like 2-6, and I've just been, snake bit by all of these injuries. Yeah, he's worth a start because I have to win now. There are a lot of teams that are really bad. I'm in a lot of leagues where there's like one team that's undefeated and everyone else is like 3-5, 2-6, couple 4-4s, but it's like everyone sucks. because of the injuries. You thought you were going to win a game, and then Jamal Charles goes down, Arian Foster goes down, and you're like, oh my gosh. I think I have every player that's gone down. I have one league where I had Tony Romo, Des Bryant, Arian Foster, and Matt Forte. Like, I don't know. I mean, at a certain point, you're like, wow, this league. I'm still 5th out of 12. I don't know how I've done that, but it's nuts. So yeah, if you need to win this week, must win. Langford. But moving forward, eek.
Yeah, I would think that to some he might be that sort of consolation prize for those who might not be able to get D'Angelo Williams. Now, granted, we already talked about him. He's got a much better. It looks like he's going to do much better over the rest of the season than Langford will do. And definitely, I think Matt Forte is coming into his last year. This is his last year on his contract. This could be ultimately the tryout for Jeremy Langford. This is a guy that was drafted by the new GM. Is he somebody that we can rely on? Can we let Matt Forte go? Can we let him go in free agency? And this could be a tryout for him, especially with these tough tests coming up. I think you bring up another great point. Could Matt Forte have been traded? Could he have been traded? Who knows? He was a name. He was rumored around. And depending on where he went, maybe he got a boost in fantasy value. Who knows? But then he goes and gets hurt with a multi-week injury. People are going to back off now, especially in the last year of a contract. You're going to get 2 games out of him. You're not going to give up much for him. But that's just the problem. It's just this whole weekend was consumed by injuries. And I dare say we have to talk about another injury now. And this is a little more not an injury you hear about every day. This is something that quite scary when you think about internal organs. Keenan Allen, who is top 5 in receiving yards and receptions in the NFL, went down on Sunday, had side pain. It's revealed yesterday that he had a procedure done. It was either today or yesterday revealed he had a procedure done, and now he's been put on the IR. He's out for the rest of the season. Philip Rivers has been having a terrific year in fantasy football. I think he's number 2 in most in standard scoring leagues for quarterbacks, and now he's got to somehow replace his best wide receiver. So a lot of people are saying Malcolm Floyd. A lot of people are saying Stevie Johnson. Who's the better guy to go after? Who's the guy that if you had to pick between the two, you would want for the rest of your season, who you'd want on your bench or even starting for you? Is it Floyd? Is it Stevie Johnson? I want to ask you that.
I think I'm the only one who's going to tell you Floyd. I think that he's going to be a really good red zone target for him. He's definitely the deep threat, and Philip Rivers is just slinging that ball around. There's just no denying it. The guy he's an animal. He's an animal this year. So I think that, I do not ascribe to the deep threat or touchdowns are always fluky kind of argument. I think that they're pretty consistent. And I think it was very clear to me that when Keenan Allen wasn't 100% and Antonio Gates wasn't 100%, that Philip Rivers was looking for Malcolm Floyd. Also, Stevie Johnson's been dealing with a lot of injuries, which is my main concern. And I think that's what's kind of holding him back. Lots of injuries. And that's not a new thing for him. Whereas Malcolm Floyd's been pretty healthy. He had that 1 year, obviously, where he was out for the entire season due to a fluke injury. But he's been pretty healthy other than that. So I'm okay with that. I like both, though. They're both great ads. You always want to add a wide receiver who's going to get more work with a quarterback who wants to fling the ball all over the place. It's a great situation. So either of them, I would say Malcolm Floyd for me by a hair, but I would be good with either of them for sure.
Yeah, I really don't think you can argue with either being worthy of being picked up if they're on your waiver wire. More likely Floyd than Stevie Johnson, because some might have kept him for when Antonio Gates was down and Johnson got more work. But Malcolm Floyd had 2 touchdowns on Sunday. I think he had over 70 yards as well. I know I told people to pick up Malcolm Floyd, but now that Keenan Allen's out for the rest of the season, we're going to see a lot of a lot of players in San Diego be thrown to a lot, and some going to get more looks than others. Antonio Gates is probably going to get an uptick.
Sat out 2 games. Oh, sorry. Stevie Johnson sat out 2 games, too, and he's only owned in 44% of Yahoo leagues.
Yeah, and
so,
like you said, injuries are the biggest concern with Stevie Johnson.
Yeah.
And we're going to see, players like, Danny Woodhead, Antonio Gates, maybe Ladarius Green, all get more looks in the passing game because Allen was their number 1 receiver, but he also was relied on heavily. After seeing, looking at his stats, people thought he wasn't going to do well this season. After, he had a good rookie season, bad sophomore season. Now he was on top again in his 3rd year, and then he gets injured. But yeah, I would have to agree with you. I would think Malcolm Floyd is the better ad right now if you had to choose one or the other. But no, neither are bad choices. I just think that Malcolm Floyd has a better rapport with Rivers, and I think we're going to see that both are going to get looked a lot in the passing game, but Malcolm Floyd might be the better, like you said, red zone target after getting 2 touchdowns over the weekend. As depressing as it is, I want to move on from these injuries a little bit. Maybe to something a little more depressing, who knows? But I know we've had 2 firings, two firings over the past 2 days, 2 that affect fantasy football pretty well. And they were both today. The first one being Ken Whisenhunt was fired today as the Titans head coach, arguably overdue. I think he has 3 wins in 2 seasons. I don't know. But then we also, hours ago, heard that Pep Hamilton, the Colts offensive coordinator, was also fired as well. So I know that you had mentioned talking about Ken Whisenhunt and his impact being fired and Mike Mularkey being the new head coach. What does that do for, the Titans offense that really seems a little stagnant in terms of fantasy football, especially with Kendall Wright being out, who knows how long with that knee injury? Does this help Marcus Mariota? Does it maybe give Dorial Green-Beckham what we all hoped for, more targets, more looks in the passing game? What do you make of this? Are they going to are they going to build some sort of a running game as well? What do you expect to happen now with a regime change?
Well, what I'd like to say is I hate coaches changes. I think that the narrative that all of a sudden people start playing well and learn how to play football is way over the top and not true, to be entirely frank. I think that, let's talk about the Dan Campbell effect. It was for 2 games and then, ouch, and yes, the Patriots kill other people, it just is who they are. But I do not like instability, right? It's a killer. What I will say is that in the long run, this is better because Ken Whisenhunt's a very stubborn coach, and he was not going to change his game whatsoever with Marcus Mariota in town. And you don't spend a number 1 draft pick on someone and then ignore what they do well. It just doesn't make any sense. And he wasn't protecting him. And I think, and good for Amy Adams' strength here, who just was amazing and went in there and basically, she's kind of newer to leading the organization, and she was there and said, "I'm done." It was very clear that this was a firing from up top, and she was done. Out of time. So I think this is the right move. They have to do this. But I think this is going to be something that we see more in 2016 than we do in 2015. I do think this will also need easing in David Cobb. I think those of you that are holding on to David Cobb might need to wait a little bit longer. This seems like we're going to be good in 2016, 2015 is what it is move to me. That's how I interpret this. And then Kendall Wright is hurt. Delaney Walker is the only person I'm starting from this game moving forward. Antonio Andrews when I'm super desperate, maybe David Cobb if I'm super desperate. But, Antonio Andrews is a player that actually looks better on tape than he does in his box score, for sure. I keep thinking he's going to get better, and he doesn't, and I don't know if that's because of the scheme or not. Their offensive line is not good. But, their defense is really decent and keeps them in games. So, better days are ahead for the organization. I don't know if the days are ahead, though, for your fantasy team, kind of the way I put that.
Yeah, no, I definitely. I just think that it can't get anywhere. It can't go anywhere but up from here. Now, to say that it will have an immediate impact, who knows? But the first thing that Mike Mularkey said is they're going to tailor Mariota's, their scheme more towards Mariota's game. Maybe we'll see him run more. And who knows? Maybe that'll open up the running game a little bit more, because that's just been, Ken Whisenhunt, like you said, is very stubborn. He's wanted to operate really a quarterback that stands in the pocket a lot, and that's not what Mariota does. He's a guy who's mobile. He moves around. That's how he makes plays. But I want to interject a little bit. I did not even realize this, but a special guest is actually a special caller is actually waiting on hold for us. This is Richard Jambrin from Bleacher Report. He's been waiting very patiently. I did not even notice. I want to get him in here right now, so I'm letting him in right now. Yeah, I know. I feel so horrible. I am currently letting him in as we speak. I look at Twitter for 1 second. He says he's been on hold longer than and then he's with his cable company. So hopefully it's loading in right now, Richard. I promise. I don't know why it's taking so long. It's just spinning in a circle, and I appreciate him being so patient. But while we're waiting for Richard to come in, I'm sure he'll make quite the presence. Want to switch over to the other firing that happened today with Pep Hamilton. A little more of a surprise, but you had to expect that something was going to happen in Indianapolis with just how the team had been performing, and then I don't know if you want to call him the fall guy, the scapegoat, the first domino, whatever you want to call him. Pep Hamilton was fired today. A really pass-oriented offensive coordinator, and that's sort of tailored to what Andrew Luck is, but Andrew Luck has been struggling. Now we see him, this isn't some joke of an offensive coordinator that's taking over him. That's Rob Shadinski, former Panthers offensive coordinator and Browns head coach. He helped Cam Newton during his, rookie season where we all saw how well he did. So I want to get your take on that as well. While Richard is somehow still loading, I'm looking at the screen, and it's still loading him in here. But do you expect any immediate change with Rob Shadinski taking over in Indianapolis?
Well, I am, again, not a huge fan of coaching changes, to say the least. I would also say that I prefer, actually, I think, Pep Hamilton's theory on offense to Shadinski. I do not think, I've seen these reports too, and they're like, he did a great job with Cam Newton at the beginning of his career, and I was like, I don't know if I agree with that. And I seem to remember Cam Newton talking about a suggestion box. You remember this? Some years ago when he was like, I don't know what's going on, man. I guess we'll put out a suggestion box with the press, and then everyone jumped all over this poor little young Cam Newton. And I think he was bad with the Browns. I don't understand. This is, it's not as bad as Kyle Shanahan, the way that I don't like him, but I'm not. I don't think that he's going to do magic. Listen, and Andrew Luck is throwing interceptions, period, end of story. It's like saying that the Denver Broncos have a problem and then not pointing to Peyton Manning's interceptions. That's part of their game, both of them, and it is what it is. But until that changes, it's, and their defense is terrible. Their defense is bad. Vontae Davis, he's alone. So I don't know. I guess I feel like this is just the beginning of the end of a lot of people in Indy. So
yeah, I would have to think that we're going to try this one more time with Richard, but I would have to think. Oh, I think it worked this time. So Richard, I hope you're there. But I hope
is this thing
that.
On?
Yeah, it is on. How are you, big guy?
I've been waiting for like ever.
I didn't even see that you were here waiting. And then I look at Twitter for 1 second, thinking that I was maybe somebody actually wanted to talk to me, and then I see that you've been sending out tweets saying that you're waiting, that you're going to call in. But so we're just talking about. I'm sure you've been listening the Colts firing of Pep Hamilton. I don't think much will change. I don't think we're going to see a lot of immediate sort of change in that scheme. Andrew Luck has been playing pretty poorly compared to what everybody thought he was going to do, or what he did last season even, where I think he leads the NFL in interceptions right now and just has been making poor decisions in terms of passing. And it's hurting everybody else. It's hurting T.Y. Hilton. It's hurting Dante Moncrief. It's hurting the tight ends. And now we might even see tight ends being used more. Who knows? But, again, this is sort of a situation where I don't think things could have gotten – it can get any worse. And they can maybe only go up from here. But I think all of it starts with Andrew Luck. And who knows how injured he is. I don't blame much of this on offensive scheme. So it'll be interesting to see. I want to move a little bit into the waiver wire piece now. Obviously, Richard, you're not, you didn't come on and
I had
have
a
all this stuff
legitimate
prepared.
question to ask.
Okay, what is the question that we can answer for you, sir?
Yes. Okay. Well, you guys both touched on Stevie Johnson and Malcolm Floyd, but what about my guy Dontrell Inman? Just what is he? Just nothing? I mean, come on.
Oh no, I think I'm picking him up in some deep leagues where I need wide receiver help. Absolutely. I mean, I actually liked Dontrell Inman last year at the end of the season. I thought the guy came out as a little mini stud, and I thought that they would do more with him. I was surprised that he wasn't really involved. I think Danny Woodhead is a bigger kind of wrench in the cog, if you will, where he's basically the third receiver. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the guy is like all over the place. Nuts. So I think Inman is going to be a boomer bust play, but yeah, they need him. They need him. Keenan Allen got a ton of targets. This is a huge loss. People aren't talking about it because it's kind of bloody Sunday, but holy mackerel, I'm with you.
Yeah, damn right they need him.
So here's some things that when I think about, if Dontrell Inman can actually put in, any sort of, fancy contributions. Last season we saw Keenan Allen really underperforming. We saw, Danny Woodhead was out for the season by the time Dontrell Inman came around. And those are two big things, along with Ladarius Green being more in the offense, Stevie Johnson in the fold now. I don't think I think there are worser options out there. But to bust your bubble,
don't you
and
dare.
I have to because you once told me on my own show to start Colin Kaepernick.
He did well.
He just had 3 games of over 20-plus fantasy points. He's one of the few. That is true.
That was the week against the Ravens. I believe that was 350 total yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm just saying.
Just throwing that in there. But in terms of Dontrell Inman, I don't see much of that happening. You'd have to think he's the number 5 option in that game, number 4 or 5 option in that passing game. He's a boomer bust, like Brandon said, but I might have less stock in him than most would. If I'm going after somebody, it's the other 2 wide receivers and Malcolm Floyd and Stevie Johnson. To answer your question.
Thank you for answering my question. I didn't mean to hijack the show. I needed to know what you guys thought about Dontrell Inman. I needed to know.
It's not a problem. I'm sure it was a pressing question that we would have gotten regardless. What is the status of Dontrell Inman, and is he going to save the world or not? But maybe Brandon is more of a fan of him than I am, but I don't see much going on with him this season, unless there's another injury, perhaps.
Well, this is the thing about how deep is your league. I mean, I'm in leagues where we have to start 12 people, and everyone has 20-person rosters, and there are 14 people in the league, and it's like, I mean, I am scrounging for some of these people. I'm like, wow, yay, I got Jonas Gray on my team. I mean, the joy for these really crappy players can be pretty high depending on your league. I mean, that's why I try to order people as much as possible. Like, yeah, I personally would rather have Malcolm Floyd the touchdown potential, I think. But Stevie Johnson had touchdowns in the first 3 games, so but the injuries scare me. But I would go Floyd, Johnson, very close, and then I would go Dontrell Inman because, man, you only know your league. I'm in crazy leagues, where this would be the find of the century.
I'm in a very professional 6-man standard league, so I just need to know if he's someone that I should target. Now, Doug, if you want to, you can boot me out at any time. But if you want to keep me around, I'll stick around. But I don't want to hijack the show.
I mean, it's up to you. We've never had a guest before on the show, so I know that you and I were working on getting a guest when you stopped by. So I don't know how to play this out, but I'll go into sort of the next piece of the show, and if you got anything to say, by all means, if you want to stick around, we're going to be talking about waiver wires a little bit. We touched on it a little bit.
This is all Brandon. I'll let her handle it. I don't want to hijack the show. I'll let her.
Okay.
She's much better at fantasy than me. Okay, so you don't want to hear that.
She's much better than She's much better than me as well, but I have to, because I'm the host, I guess I have to stick around. But it was a pleasure talking to you, Richard. Appreciate you calling in.
All right. Thank you.
And
Thank you for
I know you.
My call.
I'll make sure I keep a lookout every week for you.
Yeah.
But thanks for coming on. Thanks for asking your insightful question, and we'll talk soon.
That's right. All right. Thank you.
All right. No problem. Have a good night. So now I feel like a jerk. I think he was on hold for 15 minutes. But moving on a little bit, like I said, to talking a little bit more in depth about waiver wires that we talked about a little bit. Obviously the big ones, Jeremy Langford, D'Angelo Williams, Stevie Johnson, Malcolm Floyd. I want to sort of dive a little bit deeper into some others, especially with all these buys coming up and all these injuries, of course. Some guys that maybe are worth, picking up and putting in the league, streaming them a little bit. I know a guy for me, and I never thought I would say this, considering who he was and how he scorched my team when they drafted him in the first round years ago. But Benjamin Watson has been doing really well compared to the expectations we had for him. And then he goes and does some crazy thing like 9 catches for over 100 yards and a touchdown against New York. With the buys, we have 6 teams on bye. Is he someone? I know that he's not a bad streaming option if you're desperate. I want to get your take. What about Ben Watson? Is he someone that can continue to put up good enough numbers that he should be rostered and maybe even flexed on a really good matchup week?
Well, this is a very interesting year for tight ends. There are actually a few people that have really emerged that are on the stud territory, absolutely. He has had 4 or more catches in all but 4 matchups. And specifically, he's done really well starting week 5. In week 5, 3 catches, 36 yards, and a touchdown. Week 6, 10 catches, 127 yards, and a touchdown. And then week 7, 4 catches, 59 yards. Week 8, 9 catches, 147 yards, and a touchdown. If the guy is scoring a touchdown 3 out of 4 weeks and has 5 or more targets in each of those outings, you can feel pretty good about him. You may listen. I wouldn't start him above like a Gary Barnidge or.
Of course not. That's Gary
Barnidge
is a god.
Right. I don't even know if I would start him above Delaney Walker. But that's to me where he is in good matchups, the Delaney Walker territory. I probably should start Delaney Walker, but I'm going to take a chance on Benjamin Watson's upside. That's where he is for me. I think that Drew Brees is clicking now more. Obviously, Drew Brees got hurt in week 2, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it. He sat out week 3, and then he came back. It took a little bit to get back into the groove. They're not going to always play the Giants. The Giants are bad. Giants have no defense. This is a reality. His other good game was versus Atlanta, and he had a decent secondary, but what he was doing was more kind of the slot stuff. So you have to kind of look at where people are on the field. He did well against Indianapolis. Also, they don't have a good defense. And then at Philadelphia. And Philadelphia kind of goes on and off, but they're kind of better. So look at them as matchups. But, yeah, I don't hate him moving forward. But there are a lot of good tight ends out there, including Eric Ebron, actually. I forgot to mention him, who I think has a really big part in that offense with the old or the new regime.
Yeah, definitely. It's just been a crazy year where we have, Gary Barnidge, where, we all predicted him to be a top 5 tight end. Finally delivering. Before the season, we said, Gary Barnidge or Gronkowski. I'm struggling to figure out who to pick here. And so we have that, and it's always crazy with tight ends. You get really top heavy. Jimmy Graham has not put up the production we thought he was going to put up. Or at least what I
never thought he was going to put up production.
Oh, okay. So I thought he was gonna do well, considering how the lack of targets were in Seattle. But I'm wrong. I'll admit that. And it's rarely you'll ever hear that out of me. And I want to talk about this guy a little bit. I can't believe I forgot about him, because I acquired him in 2 different leagues, 2 different money leagues, and he goes and does this to me. Now, I'm not blaming him or anything. Steve Smith tore his Achilles on Sunday. Horrible way to potentially end a career, especially considering what he had been doing in fantasy football yet again at 38, 39, just putting up points. He missed 1 game with 4 microfractures in his back. And, of course, the Achilles takes him down. It's a shame, but, unfortunately in fantasy football we have to digress and move on a little bit and figure out who's going to make up for it. If Keenan Allen was a target hog, then, Steve Smith was a vacuum. So, for me, I'm telling people, and I think this is a pretty obvious choice, considering Brashad Perryman is probably not going to play this season, Kamar Aiken is the guy that I would pick up and treat as a sort of a mid-tier maybe, a wide receiver 3 that will be consistent. I don't know if he has an extremely high ceiling, but he's someone that will probably give you consistent yardage every week, considering there's really nobody else to throw to. What about you? Do you? I'm gonna think that you're gonna agree in saying picking him up, but where would you put him, sort of rank-wise? What would you do with him? How would you treat him?
Yeah. No, I already have Kamar Aiken in a ton of teams, actually. Once again, when you're in a deep league, you got people like Kamar Aiken on your team.
Definitely.
He had one really good game where he had 5 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown, and that was at Pittsburgh. But listen, he caught all 6 of his targets last week for 62 yards. The guy, he's only scored 2 touchdowns, so the upside's tough. But, Joe Flacco is one of a very small amount of quarterbacks that have had 4 or more 20-plus point outings in fantasy this year. And no one talks about it because the team isn't doing well. And, frankly, they shouldn't. I'm not saying that. But I do think those throws have to go somewhere. Darren Waller's out for the season. Steve Smith's out for the season. I've considered Brashad Perryman out for the season since the preseason. Frankly, that just looked terrible from the get-go. Kamar Aiken's got to be there. It's crazy. No one wants to say, hey, I'm going to, bank on Kamar Aiken to win me my team. But, it is what it is. And in fact, I'm checking here, and when it comes to other wide receivers, the next guy is Marlon Brown. And just some heinous news. The guy has never gone over 30 yards in a game, no touchdowns. I think who's going to benefit here is Kamar Aiken and Crockett Gilmore. If you can get Crockett Gilmore, I think that's going to be a guy.
Yeah, I would think, Marlon Brown, I would think he's Jeff Janis maybe that's a bad comparison, but that's sort of what I thought. He's a guy that everybody's going to hold out hope for. Not the obvious guy, but the guy who's under the radar and then goes up for 200 yards like a Miles Austin thing. But I want to point out something real quick. The little bit of research that I do, to try and say that I know fantasy football. When Steve Smith was actually out in he went out in week 4, didn't play week 5. Kamarikin had 75 yards or more in both those games. Clearly the number one guy in terms of wide receivers. Again, like I said, is he a consistent wide receiver 3 play? No. But he's someone that, depending on the matchup and just based upon pure volume he's going to get, is someone that you need to have and could flex, especially on a week like this where there's so many, wide receivers on bye. Larry Fitzgerald, John Brown, Calvin Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, Jeremy Maclin, all these guys are on bye. So who knows what, especially maybe you got a 32-team league and literally you're starting, Brian Walters or something as your wide receiver 1 and you're really hoping out for something. Who knows? But yeah, I would think that Kamarikin is someone who by default is going to have to be that guy. Not to say that he's going to put up, a Torrey Smith sort of, escapade or Steve Smith, but he's the guy and he'll get thrown to because that's what Baltimore's probably going to have to do considering the injuries that they have. Not the injuries, but just how poorly their defense is playing, and they're going to be behind a lot. So I want to sort of transition to the last part of the show. We'll go over it, quickly, but it's sort of our start-sit sort of segment where we talk about, positional players that, depending on the matchup, depending on injury or stuff like that, in this week, week 9, we should recommend starting or sitting them. We picked one from each position. I'll go first. We'll start with, the quarterback in the start position, and then we'll go from there. So for me, this week, the quarterback that I recommend people starting is actually Tyrod Taylor. Someone had asked me who to pick, and I said one of these guys will be mentioned. That's Tyrod Taylor. Coming off a bye, hadn't played the last 2 weeks, but he's facing Miami this week. He's going to be almost near 100%, as head coach Rex Ryan said. And Miami, over the past 5 weeks, on average, has given up the 6th most points to fantasy quarterbacks. Will be near 100%. And then when they faced Miami in week 3, now granted this was a different regime, not Dan Campbell, crazy maniac guy, wasn't there as the head guy, but he threw for 277 yards and 3 touchdowns week 3 versus Miami. I think he'll come back. I think he's going to make more plays with his legs because Sammy Watkins is out, and they just really don't have much to throw to. I just think that we're going to see him, run wild. I think he's going to throw a lot to LaShawn McCoy, they have a more stable running game now. Charles Clay, LaShawn McCoy, Carlos Williams will be back as well. So I like him this week. I think that, with him being almost near 100%, he could start putting up the numbers that we saw earlier in the season. But what about you? What is that quarterback that you're telling people to start?
Well, someone I don't normally do to start, but Matt Ryan, sure. Against San Francisco this week, oh, yeah, it's over. Go for it. San Francisco is a hot, and anyone who tells you otherwise is out of their minds. They're just, Lord, it's so bad over there. Now, Matt Ryan is, he's quietly almost a top 10 back, and I agree with you. That's dicey. The number says San Francisco has given up the 11th most fantasy points to quarterbacks, but that's because people get up so high that they just run the ball. But I believe that he's going to really try to make a statement with Julio Jones, and their loss to Tampa Bay was very disheartening to them at home. So I think on the road they're going to try to put a real beat down on San Francisco. So that's who I would start.
Yeah, when you have a cartoon character as your head coach and you have Blaine Gabbert as starting quarterback, things aren't going well.
Things are not going well, yes.
I don't see much going on in San Francisco that you can really rely on and say, hey, that's a glimmer of hope. But yeah, that Tampa Bay loss, considering how they started out the season, I think it was 5-0 or 4-0, and now I think they've lost 2 out of 3 or something like that. They haven't been doing as well as they started off, and that's with Devontae Freeman, who we all, of course, expected he was going to be the number 1 running back in fantasy football. I called it. So, yeah, I just think they're going to have to come out and play.
Yeah, the problem is Kyle Shanahan's offense is very one-dimensional, and I don't know why he keeps getting jobs, and no one talks about this. All he ever does is feed the ball to his number 1 wide receiver, and it's that or running. Easy to figure out. It's the same thing. All of his plays are geared towards just getting Julio Jones the ball. That's what he did in Houston with Andre Johnson, and then in Cleveland with, or then Washington with Pierre Garçon. And Cleveland, he just couldn't even pick a number 1 wide receiver, and so he couldn't get anything done. He does not know how to spread the ball around. So once he's going up against a good defense, it's very easy for them to figure it out. Now, he relies on super freak talent like Andre Johnson early in his career and Julio Jones, and in this case, Devontae Freeman, which was a wild card. But he's not happy about Devontae Freeman. He wanted Tevin Coleman as his guy. Devontae Freeman has one bad game. I'm telling you, I could see him trolling the ball. He is insane. So I just feel like this is a predictable thing, but I still think San Francisco is such an inept program at this point that it doesn't matter. They're not going to be able to stop anyone anyway. So I feel fine about it. But it is his system, and it's very clear what he does. And he'll get you off guard in the first couple games, but all anyone has to do is watch the tape. It is very clear as to what's going on.
Yeah, but he cares about our fantasy football teams. So that's why I like him. Because Bruce Arians doesn't like our fans. But Bruce Arians doesn't care about our fantasy teams. He said tough shit. So who knows?
None of them care about your fantasy team. I don't want to break anyone's heart, but no one cares about your fantasy.
I think Bruce was talking to me. Who knows? But I want to go into our running backs next. Start running back. This is a guy who's a little bit somehow being undervalued, especially by his own team. 3 touches last week. Crazy. Duke Johnson this week. I got to like him this week. Had 1 rush for 3 yards, and he had 2 catches for 68 yards against Arizona. Like I said, 3 touches. But he's going to be Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati's undefeated. They're 7-0. But they're giving up 118 rushing yards on the ground per game for the past 5 weeks. Mike Pettin said that they need to give the ball to Duke Johnson more. Do I expect it to be, 25 touches this week? No. But, I'm trying to read. I wrote so small. Cincinnati's given up 165 yards, all-purpose yards per game the past 4 games to running backs. I got to like this matchup. I got to think that they're going to be playing from behind, and they're going to be forced, especially if Johnny Manziel is going to be a quarterback, they're going to run the ball more because Johnny Manziel is Johnny Manziel. I don't think I need any more explanation. So I like this matchup this week for Duke Johnson, facing a Cincinnati team that's secretly or quietly given up a lot of points to running backs in fantasy. But what about you? What's that running back that you wanna tell people to start this?
Yeah. So I hear you about Cincinnati. I think the problem is Cincinnati doesn't give up a ton of passing yards to opposing running backs, and that seems to be how they like to use Duke Johnson mostly. But I think I love Duke Johnson. I have him in a ton of leagues. I think he's someone that, like you said, people are just it's almost like the coaches are trolling us on that one. But you know what? Coaches troll us. That's their job. That's what they do. I would say, and I'm sorry, I have to pull up my thing here. Great. I'm going to go to the other side of that ball. I'm sorry. I'm into Jeremy Langford. Cleveland. They give up all the points to running backs, and you can get them off the waiver wire, or you can just plug them in for whoever's on bye. There's absolutely nothing wrong. Or I'm so sorry, not Cleveland, against San Diego. I'm sorry.
I believe it's Jeremy Hill.
Yes, Jeremy Hill's going against them, but San Diego, I'm sorry, was what I meant to say. But yes, Jeremy Hill on the other end, yes. I mean, okay. I thought it was bizarre how last week they didn't give Giovanni Bernard any touches, or very few, I should say. I'm not quite sure if they really have decided to rethink this and go with Jeremy Hill. I'm still a little bit whatever. I actually did mean that I would like to do Jeremy Langford versus San Diego. I was debating between the two, and then I got into all my notes here. But, yeah, so I just think you can plug them in. I think it's an easy play. I think they're going to run the ball. And unlike what I think is going to be happening for Duke Johnson, they're going to have to respect the pass because Jay Cutler is actually playing decent football until he stops playing decent football, which is all. But, he's passing it around. Alshon Jeffrey is a freak. He started off the season injured. Yes, fine. He is still a freak, people. Like, I have him in so many leagues, and I had to wait a long time. But once I got him back, I knew he'd be good to go. So as long as my team was good enough to get me there, I feel great moving forward. I like him this week. I feel like Daily has really changed the way that I play season-long fantasy, and I think for the best. I'm okay with dropping mediocre talent and picking other mediocre talent that has a better matchup. And I think Jeremy Langford is a perfect example of that.
So you're recommending both Jeremy Langford and Jeremy Hill?
No, Jeremy Langford. Jeremy Langford only. No.
Okay, Jeremy Langford. Okay. Gotcha. I mean, both Jeremys have good matchups this week. I can't argue with that. But I actually I debated whether or not to put Jeremy Langford in there. But I thought it would be a little too bold for my taste. And I like to get bold. But moving into the wide receivers a little bit, we're gonna have to pick it up a little bit because us fantasy football people like to talk so much that we lose track of time. So I'm gonna go a little bit faster here because we have 8 minutes left. My starting wide receiver this week that people I'm gonna tell to start is Mike Evans. Facing the Giants, giving up the third most points on average the past 5 weeks. In standard leagues, 2 wide receivers. He got 9 targets last week. New York gave up 5 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers. And Vincent Jackson is most likely still out. You got to expect that, this is a much easier matchup for Mike Evans. He's going to probably get a lot of targets. This could be another shootout for New York. I just expect Mike Evans to have a really good week when he gets targeted so much that he's just going to have to do something with, the lack of safety play in New York as well. But what about you? What about that wide receiver that you're going to tell people you need to start him this week?
Well, I go a lot deeper than you do, but I'm saying Alan Hearns is someone that I'm plugging and playing in a lot of places. The New York Jets got killed last week, but more importantly, Revis Island is still in effect. Revis was able to hold Amari Cooper to reasonable numbers under 50 yards. But the rest of the secondary, in particular Antonio Cromartie, not good. I think Alan Hearns is just going to have a heyday with Antonio Cromartie, and I think that Revis is going to be on Allen Robinson all day. So I think, and you know what? Alan Hearns, like Eric Decker, my 2 guys that I start every week, they score touchdowns. Some guys are touchdown targets. Don't listen to people that say that touchdowns are always fluky. They're not always fluky. There are specific plays put into place for certain people to get touchdowns, and I think Alan Hearns will get one next week.
Yeah, you would have to. You thought so much about this New York secondary that they're going to be dominant all around, and then you're seeing it's just Revis again, as we saw before. But you want deep? I'll give you something deeper. Starting tight end this week, Austin Severian-Jenkins. And the reason I say this is deep is because this guy hasn't played, I think, since week 2. He's been out the past 5 games, plus it was a bye, facing New York, so Mike Evans' teammate as well, giving up the second most points to tight ends over the past 5 weeks on average. They're giving up over 89 yards on average the past 5 games to tight ends. Vincent Jackson most likely out. Murphy might be out. Murphy is definitely out for the season. Louis Murphy, that is. And New Orleans somehow got Ben Watson to get 147 yards and a touchdown. So maybe you got me beat on tight ends, but I'm going to say Austin Seferian-Jenkins is a pretty deep play. I definitely think, with, Crockett Gilmore, Eric Ebron, Travis Kelce, Jimmy Graham on bye, I would say start Austin Seferian-Jenkins as he is looking to be ready to play this week. What about you for your tight end?
Well, I went deep on everybody. So I'm saying Keith Miller is your guy. He is going up against Oakland, the team that gives up the absolute most fantasy points to tight ends. Last week, he was targeted 13 times when Big Ben came back. He was also targeted 11 times in week 1. The guy has had 10 or more FanDuel points in 3 weeks this year. And guess what? It's when Big Ben plays. He went over 100 yards last week. I look for him to repeat.
Yeah, you have to think, Bell's, absence is going to have to make up for something. And that might be Keith Miller picking up the slack. Moving over to our 6, starting with the quarterback again. I haven't been on this guy all season, and since probably week 1, and I'm going to stick with it. You got to sit Andrew Luck this week. Threw for 2 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions on last night. Facing Denver. Denver shuts down everybody. He's thrown 5 interceptions over the past 2 weeks. I did want to mention Denver has given up the fewest points to quarterbacks on the season by far. They held Aaron Rodgers to 77 yards, and Luck's hurt. He's hurt. We don't know how hurt, but he's hurt. So you got to sit him this week. I can't wrap myself to start him, no matter what your options are. Get somebody else. Get a Tyrod Taylor. Get a Marcus Mariota. Don't start Andrew Luck this week. So that's I think that's pretty bold. What about you?
It's not exceedingly bold, my friend. I don't play anyone against Denver, but I understand. I agree with you. I'm going though as bold as well, and I'm sitting Aaron Rodgers again. Aaron Rodgers is not good on the road. Currently gives us the 4th fewest FanDuel or fantasy points. I'm so used to working for FanDuel to opposing quarterbacks, and he hasn't had a 20-plus score at an away game since week 1, where it was at Chicago, and he hasn't had over 20 fantasy points in a game, period, at home or away. I think he will get his groove back when he plays Detroit in week 10, but in week 9, I don't love it.
Yeah, no, it's you got me beat again, and I oh God, you beat me again on boldness. So we're gonna have to go a little rapid fire here. We got about 2.5 minutes left. We got to get through 3 more positions, so I'm gonna go rapid fire here. I'll list off all 3 of the rest I have: running back, wide receiver, and tight end. For running back, I'm gonna sit T.Y. Hilton this week facing New York. By far, giving up the fewest points to running backs over the past 5 weeks. They've given up, on average, less than 50 yards a game, and also an average of 3.49 yards per carry. And for my wide receiver, Jordan Matthews, facing facing Dallas, who've actually only given up 1 touchdown to wide receivers over the past 4 games. And he hasn't topped 60 yards since week 2. And then my tight end, I'm gonna say Jordan Cameron. He's gotten 5 catches over the past 2 weeks. Facing Buffalo, they've given up the 4th fewest points to tight ends in the past 5 weeks. So what about you, if you want to go real quick through rapid fire, those last 3 positions?
Yeah, I'm sitting McFadden at Philadelphia. I don't care what's going on with that Dallas backfield. Philadelphia's only given up 1 touchdown to opposing running back all season. I want none of it. T.Y. Hilton versus Denver, I think it's almost a joke, and I actually feel bad for all the T.Y. Hilton owners. It's not his fault, people. I promise. It's not his fault. And I actually am a little nervous. Well, first of all, I'm sitting Julius Thomas, but he's, not playing, and it's all name recognition. If you have Julius Thomas on your roster and you can trade him away, you should do so. But I'm a little nervous about Jordan Reed, who's kind of broken out as a super stud. But New England's actually pretty tough. They have given the 6th fewest fantasy points opposing tight ends. And we all know Kirk Cousins. He is up and down, and I think there's a possibility he is way down versus New England.
Definitely. So that's going to wrap it up for us this week. I want to say thank you to Brandon for coming on. Follow her on Twitter at BrandonHerFFB. Follow me at DMoreNFL. That will do it for us here tonight. Good luck this week.